them.
Recording in progress.
Yeah. Now, someone's asked that the volume be increased. Is that just me?
You sound clear to me, Marilyn.
Okay. 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 So, are there any questions about that process so far? Okay, so I think we'll move into hearing from candidates. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to speak, and I think we'll just proceed with those who are present, and then play the video. Robin has the video from Leanne, and then there will be a time. Each person's allotted 4 minutes. Then there will be a time for questions and answers. And since there are so few folks here, that may not take a great deal of time, but we're asking that people kind of keep their question to a minute and answers to a minute. And we'll just see how that works for everyone. Then the candidates have a closing statement of 2 minutes each, and then we'll close the meeting. So does anyone have a question or comment or anything before we move? And the order in which people speak, I have a little list here and we could just go by that.
Marilyn, I can just say a little logistical note. So when you do have questions, we'd like it if you use the raise hand function. So you can find that in the bottom bar of your Zoom screen. There's a little thing that says reactions and it's got a happy face. If you click on that, it will give you a button that says raise hand. And then you'll get this little hand in the corner of your screen. And the reason we prefer that is that if lots of people have questions at the same time, it tells us the order of who asked first. So it's much easier for us to manage that way. You're welcome to use the chat if you have anything. I'll be monitoring that. And if you have any technical problems, you can also put those in the chat and I'll try to help you out. I'm really just here as the tech person in the background.
Okay. Nita, would you like to start?
Okay, I'm happy to be here. I thought I had another appointment that was like sort of overlapping this, but that was tomorrow, so I'm going to be here for the full event for today. Greetings, I am Chilcockadine, currently living on the beautiful traditional territory of the Kamloops Swapnik. I'm opening with a bit of background about myself. I dropped out of school after finishing grade 7 when I was no longer required to attend residential school. In my early 30s, I enrolled in Okanagan College to upgrade my education. I was very naive, not aware of all of the political enemies and corporate giants lurking outside my little protected space. I had zero knowledge of the Canadian political system. Racism was not new to me, but as an adult student attending classes with teenage dropouts, it was difficult. In 1996, I came across a poster advertising a National Women's March Against Poverty for bread and roses for jobs and justice. I wanted to publicize the event in Kelowna. I photocopied the poster and not knowing where to start, I went to the local television station, the radio stations, the newspaper offices, and gave them copies of the poster. One of these places gave me a lead on the Kelowna Women's Resource Centre. That was the introduction to my political and social justice activities. From there, I became involved with the Council of Canadians. One of the first campaigns I was involved in was a movement around the Multilateral Agreement on Investment. I was involved with many different groups after that, including women's groups, multicultural organizations, religious human rights groups, Kelowna Organized Against Racism, and partisan politics. Today, my main focus is the Council of Canadians. And these are some reasons why the Council is important to me. It is the voice of the commons which is not shackled by the funding constraints of government or corporate funds. We sometimes forget that most of the organizations or groups that we're involved in are bound by others. We just have to remember that a person with a soft voice backed by research is louder than a person yelling obscenities while chained to a tree. We have dedicated staff who put their heart and soul into the issues that are critical for a better tomorrow. I have personally lived through all the injustices that the Council of Canadians fights to overcome. The Council is an ally with many different Indigenous nations. The Williams Lake chapter acted as an intervener in our, I think, title court case, which marked the precedent in the recognition that we had title to our land. The Council of Canadians is known worldwide as a leader in democracy for the people, planet, and democracy. And that's why I'm involved in the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. Steve?
Thanks, Marilyn. Thanks, Nita. It's a pleasure to be on the board with you and part of the nominating committee. My name is Stephen Staples. I want to begin by acknowledging the land in which I am is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Métis, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation, and Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississaugas of the Credit. So as I mentioned, I'm calling from Toronto. I live here in Regent Park and have been here for the last 5 years, but I've lived all over Canada. I'm a maritimer originally and spent 10 years in BC and 20 years in Ottawa, but I'm here now. I'm delighted to be reoffering. This will be my, I think it's it's my second term officially since the new constitution was brought in. So I'm reoffering. And I'm very excited to continue to do work with the council as it navigates through this time. And I can just say from my own history, I'm currently working for the Canadian Health Coalition. I've worked in progressive causes for all of my career, and in fact became a member of the Council of Canadians over 30 years ago when Maud visited Fredericton, my hometown, at around 1990. A lot of people know me from the peace movement, but I've also actually was the regional organizer for the Council of Canadians in the late 1990s, and I opened the first office outside of Ottawa, and it was in downtown Vancouver, and I was an organizer. I worked with Maud at the time and all the board members setting up chapters across British Columbia. And for 2 years, we set up a chapter almost every month. It was a time of tremendous growth, and that's when I met Nita, actually, at the time during the MAI campaign. Was a very big time. Then Maud asked me to come to Ottawa, and I headed up the campaigns for another 2 years. So I did 5 years with the council at that time before heading off and setting up my own organization, which was the Rideau Institute in International Affairs, post 9/11, and all that started with Stephen Harper's first government at the time. But I've continued to be around the Council of Canadians and the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. I'm also on the board of that and have worked in a number of different organizations. And I'm happy to continue on the board to provide whatever contribution I can make. And right now, I'm very happy to work on the nominating committee when I'm not running myself, because I had to recuse myself. But I see it's been in very good hands the last few months that I've been away. So that's awesome. And my role, along with others, is to help find the next generation of leadership for the Council of Canadians. And I'm very keen on that. I'm looking forward to any questions.
Thanks, Steve. Joe?
Thank you very much, Marilyn. Good evening to everyone. Greetings. This is going to be, I believe, my second term on the Council of Canadians. And it's an organization that I have a lot of love and respect for. And, you know, when you think about it, I think it's important for me to say what I think Council of Canadians is. I see the Council of Canadians as the preeminent social justice pan-Canadian organization in Canada. Another way of putting it, it is the pan-Canadian progressive people's place. And of course, it is at the community level that the organizing happens. So it's not through people's unions, though we are supportive of unions. It is not through a specific issue, be it the peace movement or women or equity-seeking groups issues. it is at the community level that we do our work. And I like the Spanish way of putting it. It's la gente, or el pueblo unido, the people united type of organization. So, you know, it really is, as such, then an important federal, pan-national institution. Highlight the fact that it targets, its key focus is the national campaigns that need attention. So the pharmacare one that we're currently engaged in is dear to many of us, and the community over corporations, to make sure that communities are part of public policy conversations that are not then dominated by corporations. So that's what I see Council of Canadians as being, and I am, of course, happy and delighted to be part of that movement. By way of my own background, I was in local government in the city of Toronto. I was an elected official for 28 years. And before that, kind of this vague memory of Stephen in the peace movement in the 1980s, from 1980 to the early 90s, I was engaged there. And I did a lot of work in the global South, social justice, El Salvador, South Africa work before that. I now teach a little bit at York University, and I consult for this group and that group. What do I bring? Well, I hope to continue to bring what I brought in the last term, and that is a sense of government processes and how you kind of flip an issue, how you bring pressure to bear in a focused, targeted way, how to understand media and how that works, and then also to understand political processes, like how do you change a conversation in Canada to help it effect progressive causes. I believe that I have some knowledge of those kinds of processes, and hope to bring that wisdom. Having been on the other side when I've seen people trying to influence City Hall, and seeing how they win votes, either people that are friendly to us or people that are hostile to us, and understanding those kinds of dynamics, I think is what I try to bring to the Council of Canadians. I sit on the budget committee. I've sat on budget committees at City Hall for many years. I understand how budgets work and the need to really and frankly, in my peace movement days, I also was on the budget committee, and I understand the link between activism and budgets. And if you don't get the budget right, you can't get the activism right. And if you don't get the activism, if you get the activism and advocacy work right, the money then flows. So that's the committee that I sit on. Yeah, and happy to be part of the organization going forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Robin, can you play Leanne's video, please?
Yes, I can. One moment. I'll just play a few seconds. Can everyone let me know if they can hear it? I just want to make sure the audio is coming through.
And tell you how thrilled I am to be able to work.
Can you hear that?
It's low.
Okay. It is a bit quiet, so this would be a good time to turn up your speakers and then turn them down again after this video is done, because this is as loud as it's going to get. Okay, here we go.
Hi, Leanne McMillan, joining you from Dundee, Scotland on Tuesday after the May long weekend. I'm not able to attend the All Candidates Forum this Thursday evening because I'm 6 hours ahead of you and I'm too old to be staying up past midnight. So I really am sorry about that, but I did want to make a video so I could say hi to you and tell you how thrilled I am to be able to work with you and with the other members of the directors to really help us fulfill our campaign plans over the next months, years, however long I'm able to serve for you. I have been an activist since I was in the student movement in the early 1980s. I went to Queens and lived in Kingston. I was born in Ottawa and grew up there. I worked for the Canadian Federation of Students and was the first field worker in Sudbury, Ontario, and my region was Thunder Bay to Ottawa. And at that time, I did speak French and English. I was able to attend the founding meeting of the Council of Canadians at the Chateau in Chateau Laurier in Ottawa. And over that time, all of the issues that you've been active in, that we've been active in, fight for fair, not free, trade agreements, for pharmacare, to defend public health care, for Indigenous rights, for clean water, you name it. Those have been the issues that have been close to my heart in my voluntary life and in my work life. After I worked for the student movement, I started at Osgoode Hall Law School, and I did actually live in Toronto for 4 years then. I worked as a tenant organizer in the legal aid clinic, and ultimately I articled at a labor and employment firm in Toronto. I then followed my heart at the time and moved to Nova Scotia, where I worked as a labor and employment lawyer in a private law firm that represented about 90% of the unions in all of Atlantic Canada, not just in mainland Nova Scotia. Both my daughters were born there, and I was involved in early learning, the fight for universal public, accessible, quality early learning and childcare, and also anti-poverty initiatives. Throughout all this, I've been an activist in the women's movement, the choice movement, those sorts of things, on top of other things. I left private practice and worked in-house at the Nova Scotia Nurses Union, so I'm deeply, deeply appreciative of the importance of public health care for everyone here, and the importance of finishing the job of public health for pharmacare and dental care. I'm also deeply appreciative of the work that the workers have been doing during COVID, but also in the decades before that. In 2008, I began to work for the members of the Canadian Union of Public Employees in Newfoundland and Labrador, Cape Breton, and mainland Nova Scotia. And I saw the absolutely complete importance of public services for the people on the East Coast, from municipalities to schools to acute care to long-term care, community health care, child care, just everything. Anti-privatization campaigns, clean water campaigns, these were all things that were part of our daily life. I moved back to Ontario in 2012 with CUPE and represented CUPE members working at universities and electrical utilities. I retired from full-time employment in December of 2020, and I am now retired, the treasurer for an association of retired union employees, and I'm also the CUPE representative to the Board of Trustees of the University Pension Plan in Ontario, which is a jointly sponsored defined benefit pension plan. I'm trying to learn Spanish continually. I exercise daily. I'm trying to be a good parent and a good nana for all the little ones in my life. I can't wait to work with you folks. Thanks so very, very much. Drop me a line at leanneintoronto@gmail.com if you have any questions. Bye.
Thank you, Leanne. You can't hear me, but thank you. Okay, so that concludes the presentations. So before we move to questions, I just want to acknowledge that I am on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people in Mi'kma'ki, and I appreciate the privilege of being able to live on this beautiful land. So we'll open for questions. Comments? Joey?
I don't have a question. I just have had the opportunity to work, of course, with Nita, Joe, and Steve on the board, and really so much look forward to continuing to work with you. I'm really glad that you've chosen to reoffer. And having just met Leanne on that video, I can't say enough about how impressed I am and what a great addition I see her being to the board, and I'm sure that the other candidate as well. As always, I just am so appreciative of people who choose to put their names forward to help all of us move forward as this organization and continue to grow and be stronger. Thanks.
Thanks, Joey. And I saw Ken. You're muted.
I'm sorry. I'd just like to confirm my appreciation for the quality of the people, the candidates. I'm very glad to have tuned in to find out, because it's my first time I've been sort of this close to the upper echelons, and I'm really impressed with the quality of representation we're about to include in the board. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you all people who are stepping forward. It makes me feel confident that the Council of Canadians is worthy of my support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you
Ken.
for that. Anyone else? Wendy?
Hi there. Many of you don't know me. I'm a newbie. But what I would like to say is I would like to see any of the candidates that are stepping forward to recognize the significant importance of pushing forward Indigenous rights and making sure we do that in a way that is respectful. We like to acknowledge the land, but more significantly, I've grown up this way. I come from Cowes Reserve, Treaty 4 territory, unceded territory of the Anishinaabe, the Neowau, the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, and of course the homelands of the Métis. For me, with the teachings of my father, it's very important for us to move forward if we're going to address all these things that we're so concerned about. So that all the candidates, when you go into these roles, as far as I'm concerned, you should be coming at it from a direction where you're going to be moving forward in a way that is ensuring that the voices of Indigenous peoples are being reflected, and not so much the rights. I agree, we have rights. There's no doubt about it. But for me, it's we have duties. We all have duties to the land. And when we talk about reconciliation, we will never achieve it if we don't start to recognize that we have to reconcile with the land first, because we're doing so much damage to the land. So every time I speak in these circles, I always make sure that I'm being clear that yes, we have rights. We have collective rights as Indigenous peoples, and we have individual duties to do what we need to do to ensure that the land is kept in a way that provides for our future generations. So I think that the language that we're using and how we're approaching this needs to be reflective of a new way that brings together two ways of understanding, not just the colonial way, but I think the Council of Canadians has an important role to play. And I think all of you, whoever comes in, has a very important role to speak in a way and use your words in a great way. And I was taught that when we speak from our heart and we use our voice and we use our minds in such a way that we're doing it for the collective good, we're living greatly. So we're using it in a way that is not for me, but for everyone. The children, not even just us human beings, because that's human supremacy. We have to speak because we were meant to take care of creation. I believe that the Council of Canadians, I'm also the regional organizer for the Prairies, for the council. And I'm doing my very best to try to integrate and try to bring this message into it. And I do that in all the meetings too, within our meetings themselves. But I'm transferring it on to you, those of you who are going to join the board. Try to bring that message across too. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Wendy. Yvonne?
I just wanted to reiterate what Kenneth said and a couple of others. I just want to thank the people who have stepped forward. I really appreciate them. In some cases renewing, in other cases putting their names forward, new. I'm bringing new energy to the board. But I have a question. I guess Joe referred to the fact that about budgets, and I know that the Council of Canadians at the moment is going through financial restrictions or tightening, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about where our directions are going to be going for improving the finances going forward. Anybody who wants to take that on from the people who are running, who are nominated.
Joe? I know you've been on the finance committee.
Yeah, I've been on the finance committee, and just to speak broadly for the organization itself, I think we're in the, call it the post-Maud Barlow era of an organization. So, you know, you have the charismatic leader that basically kickstarts the organization, brings it to a certain level, and is able to just raise money by just traveling and doing his or her thing. So the money came easy at that point, or easier than it is now. I do think that the Council of Canadians has excellent staff that does the fundraising, and you know, I'm not an expert, but because I've done, I know a few things, enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be meaningful. I think we need to. There is work ahead. There is work ahead, and it is really combining the focus campaigns and always including a financial element to it. So yes, we're trying to build a pro-pharmacare movement. We want to win that issue, and we want to make sure that people know that Council of Canadians were part of that, and that happened because people donated. And I think some of those linkages aren't as solid as could be. So there's no activism without an ask. Right. That's the way I would put it. And the more we make that link, I think the money will start to come in this new area, not in this new era. Mm-hmm. Easy money's days are over. Now it's we have to work for our money. And I think good campaigns, solid focus, good media presence will help build the financial side of the organization.
Thank you, Joe. Nita?
Okay, I agree with Joe in terms of that we need to have sort of a public face that we've lost when Maud left. It's basically people want to give money, but if you're not visible in the broad world of media, basically people forget that we're there. So, and if I'm not saying that someone has to travel like the way Maud did, because she did other things besides just campaigning for the council, but to go and meet with the grassroots people who are supporters and who are doing the work. And I think it's important that we have to remember that not everybody lives in Ontario. You have to get out of Ontario once in a while, is basically what I'm saying. But we do need some personal contact. And I think that's important to remember, because if I didn't know the Council of Canadians, I would not give money to them. It basically what it comes down to. You have to have that recognition in order to gain funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. Any further comment, Steve?
Okay, yeah, I'll just say thanks, Yvonne. I'm a monthly donor to the Council of Canadians. I have been for a very long time. I don't give monthly to everybody, but there's a few groups that I do. And I would totally agree. I agree with Joe's comment that successful campaigning will generate more money, and I agree with Nita as well too. Connections with community is really important. When I was at the Rideau Institute, I raised about $3 million over 8 years, and I did 2 cross-Canada tours at the time. So I know that connection, and I learned all that from working with Maud. I knew that was it. But also, I think the big issue, the big plus is being at the forefront of issues, being able to predict where the next concern is going to be politically dialed in to what's happening, and to just have that and have a network of people that can provide a sense of what's coming next and be able to connect things together so that we can provide leadership on those issues. The council provided great leadership. Nita mentioned the MAI. That was one of the early campaigns. We campaigned against the bank mergers. We did genetic engineering. We did water. I remember when Maud first raised the issue of fresh water at a board meeting, and everyone sort of looked at her and said, what are you talking about? But she had a sense of that. And I think that we need to continue to develop that ability to help take complex issues like trade agreements, like interest rates, like things like that, and boil them down into tangible ways that impacts people's lives. Because you may not be interested in the economy, but the economy is certainly interested in you. To switch another phrase around, and the council is there. We always used to joke that the council was the Ghostbusters of the progressive movement in Canada. Who are you going to call? Council of Canadians, and so we play an essential, vital role in predicting where things are going to go, where attention is going to be needed, and holding the government account in ways that they don't even know yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I see that Deewa has joined us. Welcome, Deewa. Are you actually there?
I'm there. Just finished work. Hi.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Would the candidates make any closing remarks? I know this discussion has been a bit of a closing, but there is an item on the agenda for allotting 2 minutes for people to make any additional comments. So maybe we can just go in the order that we started with Nita.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to Wendy before I start. That was a lot of good information. And basically, what I see my role in the council is that I don't have to know everything about Indigenous people, because we have such a large, diverse country that I cannot know what's going on in every part of Canada. And that's what my past friend who used to be on the council, when he was handing over that to me, that's what he said, you don't have to know everything about every Indigenous nation. You just have to know the issues. And that's basically what I concentrate on, are the issues around water and sovereignty and food safety and environment and all the things that we work towards. Okay. Since I joined the board of directors, there have been a lot of changes in governance. One of these changes was to make it easier and more transparent in the way that board members were elected. It is ironic that there are not many who are willing to step forward to take part in the new electoral system. I had hoped that I could compete in the election process and not just be acclaimed. There is no fun in acclamation. Otherwise, I applaud those who put their name forward to stand up for the issues we address. But it is not about us or our notoriety. We are a grassroots organization. Without the supporters who are out there standing in solidarity, or the silent ones who give funds so that may happen, there would be no Council of Canadians. In the past couple of years, I have had several personal tragedies. I have considered leaving the board, and it is quite demanding on my time. I was not going to reoffer for the next 3 years, but I received a call to give the council just a bit more of my time. I want to stress again, as I have in the past, the council is working on building equity within our organization, but that does not mean that if you're not part of an equity-seeking group, and by all means, don't hesitate to put your name forward, not just once a year, but throughout the year to fill any vacancies which may arise. I cannot imagine a Canada without the Council of Canadians. It would sadden me if it disappeared due to the lack of volunteers or supporters. Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. Steve?
So it's hard going after Nita, but thank you. But an advantage. Thank you, Nita. You reminded me that I didn't answer Wendy's question. So on Indigenous issues, so just from a personal standpoint, the next generation of my family in Fredericton is becoming integrated with the Woolstook people of the old St. John River, which we're now calling the Woolstook River, in New Brunswick. So I have branches of family now. And these are kids that I went to school with. I grew up in the North Side in Devon, in Fredericton. So it was everybody in the mix. And I also had the privilege a number of years ago of working with the Saisi Dene in northern Manitoba, who were left literally on the beach in the 1970s. They were a relocated nation, and they had never got compensation. And I had the privilege of working with them in Ottawa when I was in Ottawa, bringing a group of them to Ottawa to meet with MPs and work with a fabulous bunch of lawyers based out of Winnipeg as well. And we won them the proper settlement, $33 million, and an apology, which just came through in 2016. And that was one of the best projects, I got to say, I ever worked with. And I saw racism right in my face working with folks in Ottawa who are Indigenous. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Even the glimpse that I had of working with people in Ottawa, of having Indigenous people working with me in Ottawa. So that was a really eye-opening experience. And I think I'll generally leave it at that, saying I'm looking forward to another couple of years, and the future will be bright for the council.
Thanks, Steve. Joe?
Thank you. Two things I want to do. One is address Wendy's comments and affirm them, support them. I do want to say that one of the joys in my life as a city councillor was working with Native Men's Residence, which is a local shelter serving Indigenous, largely Indigenous, but not exclusively Indigenous men. And I've helped, and I totally appreciate what Stephen is saying about how it's amazing the stuff that comes out when NamiRes tries to expand and add a second shelter right next door. And so I've been part of those processes. And also then, now that I'm not in office, the executive director and I that's one of the relationships that has endured. And I'm helping them with a shelter in the downtown core, and then a housing project more in the east end of Toronto. And when the executive director, Steve, calls, I say, yes, I am in. I will. It's part of my journey on truth and reconciliation. And I think for my journey, I come from, I used to be, my DNA is Roman Catholic, and I feel I no longer identify with that religious tradition, but I do say that we have a special, those of us of that background have a special responsibility to learn the truth and to seek reconciliation. So that I think is, and I think everyone who utters those words at the beginning of the land acknowledgement, and sometimes I challenge my students to do that. Well, what does that mean for you? We just said this little land acknowledgement. Like, what does that mean tomorrow? Like, how do you how do you basically put that in your consciousness and in the way you live your life? The other thing I want to say just broadly is there's so many issues out there. Like I do think we're at a unique period in history when the environmental collapse is happening, with the division of rich and poor, where there's these geopolitical conflicts, there's water crises, and sometimes you can find it overwhelming. And this is where I think strategic thinking is really, really important. And sometimes I do feel that we've taken on too many issues, and maybe that even hurts fundraising. But finding wedge issues to me is, I think, something that we need to do smarter, better at Council of Canadians. The other thing that I think we need to do better is coalition building. There's nary an issue that is won solely by an organization, as good as and strong as it is, on its own. It's when, say, Pharmacare, when the Council of Canadians joins with the various health coalitions, provincially based and nationally based, and then maybe some unions as well, and some health-oriented organizations, that's the winning combination. And so I'm interested in winnable issues, strategically thought through, where you work with a variety of other people. We don't need to own the pie. We need to basically find a way to share the pie and win the issues. And the last thing I'm interested in is, and I do notice that virtually all of there are no people of color on the call, and we are probably, yes, we're an older demographic, except maybe one or two. And I think we need to find a way to pass on the baton. And so I think that's another challenge that we need to figure that piece out. And me as a white guy, I'm very happy at the appropriate moment when the right person comes to say, here's the baton, I can be in the background. I don't need to be on the board. I'm not on the board because I want to be on the board, and yes, and I think I can help. But at some point, I feel I and many of us who have played roles in the last 30 years need to find ways to diversify, and I'm committed to that as well. And to going softly into that gentle night.
I think, Wendy, with all due respect, we're kind of ready for the closing of the meeting. If you have a short comment, that's great, but I think we'll move to the closing.
The only thing that I wanted to say was that whenever I was taught, I was raised pretty traditional. Whenever we deal with heavy topics, we have to make sure that we end in a way that reminds us of hope. We have to always remember we're working together, and we have hope when we're together. And that's something we always have to remind each other about when we end these meetings, because sometimes they can be pretty heavy. So always remember, end on hope. Remind everybody that together we can do great things. Thank you.
That's a very nice ending, Wendy. Thank you very much. And I think that there's cause for a great deal of hope when you look at the people who are stepping forward to serve on the board. As someone who did serve a couple of years on the board, I can attest to how hardworking people are, and to the care that is taken in the decision-making process, and the willingness to say we need to step back on this one and do some work on it before moving forward, which is a great sign, I think. So I would just like to express thanks to the folks who are stepping down, Nev and Dee Dee and Marilyn Hay. They've all been very hardworking board members and will be missed, and we sincerely appreciate their contribution. And to echo what everyone else has said about those who are reoffering and who are continuing their terms, that we sincerely appreciate the work. And in these times, we very much need a strong national organization. And increasingly, we're finding at a local level, people coming to us and saying the Council of Canadians is a credible organization that we can work with and we can trust. And so that's a tribute to the kind of leadership we have, both with the board and the staff. So I thank you all. So I think with that, Diwal, I would ask if you have anything to add. We can't see you except your photo, but if you do you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I just apologize. I couldn't make it for the first 30 minutes due to work, but I'm happy to have heard some of the closing remarks and some of the words from great activists like Steve, Joe, Nita, and on behalf of the nominating committee, and I want to thank you also, Marilyn, for chairing this candidates forum, and also for all the support from the staff like Genevieve and Robin. And thank you to all for participating in this forum.
Thanks, Diwa. So with that, good night, everyone. It's so nice to, at least in these times, we see people's faces, and that's lovely. And we are much stronger when we hang together and fight together. So onward. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. We're just going to ask Diwa and Maureen to stay